Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Aparutade sangamadasa tawara ye sodavanta bamunchantu satang. So contemplating this present moment, here and now, turn the attention inward and listen and observe. Bhutto, knowing the way it is. So this is the breath, the posture, the state of the mind, the citta, cittanupassana, the mood, the emotional quality, because these are the way it is now. We're not seeking to contemplate, to judge it in any way, but observe it. The breath is like this, the posture, sitting posture is like this, and the aramana, the citta is like this. They say in Thai, we say samruam sangvara padana, one of the efforts to collect oneself in the present, to be present, fully present in this state of attentiveness, relaxed attention, knowing, observing. So this is because the sense world pulls us out. What we see, we look at things, we hear sounds, and so forth. The sensory objects to the senses are drawing us outward into the sense objects. And then we have names for that, we have description, we have preferences, biases, prejudices, views and opinions about the sankharas that we're experiencing, that we see or hear or smell or taste or touch or think. But in samruam, in sangvarapadana, it's the effort to collect, be collected at one point, here and now, this state of relaxed attention, openness, bhutto, knowing the way it is, it's like this. Now there are three fetters. There are 10 sangyojanas, or called, translated as fetters. And the first three fetters are the fetters that prohibit the realization, the understanding of stream entry, sotapanna. And these first three fetters are all human manufactured fetters. They're not just the natural conditions in nature that we're born into, but the first one is the Sakya Deity, which is the self-view, personality view, the ego, the sense of I am this body, me and mine. And this is insidious because everybody is thoroughly convinced that they are their ego, their physical body, and that's what we find, in the world, what we operate from. It's conventional reality, but it is an illusion. It's something you acquire after you're born. You're not born with Sakya Deity. That's an acquisition due to conditioning. Siddhabhatta Paramartha is a name for the second one, and that is like cultural conditioning, social conditioning, religious conditioning. So we have, we're born into the parent. We're born to the parents. We have their particular ethnic identities, cultural conditioning, attitudes, the social identities, whether you see yourself as working class, middle class, upper class, see yourself as a male or female. This is acquired after you're born. That's Siddhabhatta Paramartha under the conventional conditioning, cultural, social, ethnic conditioning. And then the third is vicikicca, Pali word for doubt, which is always the result of attachment, blind attachment, ignorant attachment to the thinking process. So we aren't born thinking. We don't have a language, like a newborn baby doesn't have a language. He learns that after birth. You have no ethnic identity when you're born, but you're told you are Australian, you are Chinese, you are Sinhalese, you are a little boy or a little girl. These are the cultural conditionings, ethnic identities. So notice that these human-made fetters are what block us from the obstructions of fetters to recognizing the Eightfold Path, the path of Dhamma, the way of non-suffering, which is because the following states, the four states like Sakata, Kamyana, Kamyarahant, are dealing with the natural forces that we no longer are labeling me and mine, and we're not, but it's just the vipaka kamma, the character tendencies and so forth that remain after the first three fetters have been relinquished, have been seen through. So these three fetters, the basic one, the first one, Sakya Deity, sense of a separate self. I am this body, I am this personality, me and mine. And this is what they call atta, rather than anatta. And this is an acquired identity. As I said before, you're not born with an ego. What you're born with is a human form with consciousness and feeling. You feel. You have the human package of, like a newborn baby has instinctual intelligence. It operates through its feelings, its needs. It doesn't say after it's born it's time for dinner. It learns that later. So it cries when it's hungry and so forth. The mother knows when to nurture the newborn baby. And so there are these natural conditions that are non-personal, But it becomes personal when we're identified with the body, with the gender of the body, with the color of the skin, with the size. What our mother or father, how they relate to us, whether we're wanted or not wanted, or loved or not loved, these affect the sense of your self-worth, and your ego is formed from these experiences. So in order to become a personality, you have to think, I like to use the reference, to become Ajahn Sumedho, I have to think, I am Ajahn Sumedho. On a conventional level, you think, there, Ajahn Sumedho sitting there, he's Ajahn Sumedho all the time. When I'm resting in the kuti, then it'll say, Ajahn Sumedho is resting in the kuti. This is conventional reality, samut satcha. But I don't go around obsessed with my name, thinking I'm Ajahn Sumedho. Just when the conditions arise, then I start thinking I am, because that's it becomes ego if think I'm Ajahn Sumedho all the time. Where we're trying to separate what is conventional, what is acquired, what is artificial, and what is reality, discerning the difference. We have these possessive pronouns, me and mine. This is mine. I'm like this. This is me. And this emphasizes the sense of separateness as a separate form, separate individual person. But to observe this, it's not to discard it. Conventional reality is not to be despised, but it's to be understood with wisdom. And so, one time somebody asked me in Amaravati, they asked me if I had psychic powers, and I said, I can disappear right in front of your eyes. And so he said, would you show me? And I said, okay. And he said, you're still here. And I said, but I've actually disappeared. The sense of me and mine. You go into the silence of the mind, there's no self, there's no Ajahn Sumedho in that. Ajahn Sumedho disappears. I don't think he quite understood what I was talking about. Because on the conventional level, I'm Ajahn Sumedho all the time. But this is like exploring, investigating, testing out, so that you see for yourself. Are you the same we tend to think we're the same person all the time. When we're asleep, I'm the same person when I'm awake, when it's raining or when it's sunny, when people are praising, saying you're a great teacher, or when they're condemning me, that I'm the same person all the time. But when you observe, when there's Puto observing, then you realize that the personality changes according to the conditions. Sakya Deity has no continuity. It's continually changing according to whether the changes in the weather or the people you're with, whether you're at the office or at home, whether you're feeling healthy or sickly. But the constant factor is the Puto, the awareness, and then the personality adapts itself to conditions, because it's just another condition. It's anicca, it's dukkha, it's anatta. And so once you begin to see, it's not getting rid of Sakya Ditti or trying to suppress it, but understand it. No, it's merely conventional reality, and it still can be used on that conventional level. But we're no longer limited, bound into the straitjacket of a permanent, the illusion of being a permanent person, a permanent personality, a permanent type. People are seeking identities all the time. They want to know who am I? Where do I fit in? What is my real self? Where do I belong? Who are my parents? With so much intermarriage now between different racial groups, what race am I if I'm not just one? With my mother and father are different races. What nationality am I? Am I Australian or Sri Lankan or Chinese or? And we want identities, to be told, to know what we are. But in reality, the relief is not being anybody. Anatta is actually a relief, because whatever you decide you are, whatever identity you decide upon, it's not reality, and it's still dukkha, it's still suffering. Silabbata Paramasa is a conditioning process that we acquire after birth by the culture we're born into. So we acquire the attitudes, the prejudices, the mannerisms, the systems of etiquette and value systems of the particular culture and religion that our parents are. But this is not necessarily like a self-view, but it is a condition that we tend to take for granted and identify with. You can see so many of the problems now with the terrorism and identities with religious fervor or with nationality. The people are not satisfied or content, but they want to have an expression of their particular group. Everybody is standing up for their rights, their human rights. In the process, without wisdom, in the process, they create strife and division. So we can carry resentments from past experience and from our parents, have certain prejudices, maybe ethnic or racial, national prejudices, political biases that we might acquire from our parents. This is what put under the fetter of Siddhapata Paramasa. It's still conditioned phenomena. It's not natural phenomena. It's created by human beings out of ignorance. And then the third, vicikicca, doubt, insecurity, not being sure, is always the result of attachment to the thinking process. At this time, there's so much kind of right-wing political movements or wanting to get rid of foreigners or establish a sense of identity with things of the past or fundamentalist attitudes towards religion. Why? Because everything is being challenged, is up for grabs. Everything's mixing, changing, and it can be frightening to us. So the human mind tends to think the good old days when you knew what you were, where you belonged, what your nationality is, and the religious views, whether what to believe in. You're told what is right, what is wrong by somebody else. And so you get into like born-again Christianity or Islamic fanaticism. These are all the result of seeking an identity, of the Silapata Paramasa, the identity with cultural conditioning, religious conditioning, and with the thinking process. We want even the illusion of security, even if it's not secure. Tell me everything is okay, even though it may not be. Just don't tell me there's any crisis or there's an issue. Just say, I just mean everything is okay. And then that makes me feel relief, because there's always anxiety around. When I leave the monastery, things change, and I come back. I hear there's issues. Some people are upset. Others have, have left. Others are wanting to disrobe. And when I come back from time away from the monastery, and I hear, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear, how is Amaravati? Everything is okay, even though it's not. So just tell me you love me even though you don't. And things like this. We want even the illusion of stability and security, because insecurity, doubt, is something that we don't know how to deal with it. We want answers to every question, solutions to every problem, definitions for everything. But in Dhamma, it's not about defining and describing. It's not about absolutizing good and bad, right and wrong. It's about the way things are. And what we can know is at this moment, doubt is like this. My nature, when I first started meditating, I've read the Visuddhimagga, and they're talking about different characters, the moha jarit, the deluded type, or the dosa jarit, the angry type, or the lopa jarit, the greedy type. And I think, what type am I? There's three types: lopa, dosa, moha. Lopa, I've got a lot of that, but I wouldn't say I'm particularly greedy. That's not a real problem. I have anger and things like that, but it's not. I'm not obsessed with that. Moha, I think I'm the moha jarit, a doubter, a skeptic. And so from Samanera period, when I was trying to figure everything out as best I could, I figured out that doubt was something that my skeptical mind, my critical mind, would always take me to feeling insecure. And just, and I could see a longing for some kind of verification, to find a teacher to tell me, you're all right, Sumedho, or everything is okay. Just to get confirmation that I'm on the right path from a great teacher, from someone, an enlightened master, wanting, the security of verification. Having educational degrees gives you a sense of I'm well educated, though there's a sense of attainment and achievement in that, but it still leaves you in the state of insecurity, uncertainty. And this uncertainty, insecurity, if we just react to it. And then we're always looking for some form, even a false sense of security, an illusion of security. We try to look for another person who will be faithful and love us forever. And we want somebody else to give us this sense of security. Or the security of our profession, when we professionals and we want to know that I will have my job till I retire with a pension, the sense of having life insurance, and as it gives you this sense of security for the future. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this, it's not a judgment, but pointing out how we create this doubt all the time, and the discomfort, the kind of fear of uncertainty, of things going all wrong, of failure, of rejection. Attachment to the thinking process. When you think about the future, you think, well, you can look at it, there's pollution, climate change, overpopulation, there's a lot of insecurity, there's nobody agrees on anything anymore. It's all about, my rights and what I think. And we'd like social harmony and brotherhood, fellowship, peace, democracy. These are ideals that we would like to have, because they would make us feel secure. If we could have really a perfect democratic political system and a good economy. But we know that even under the most stable political systems, they're not that stable. They're subject to change, to all kinds of surprise events, to terrorism. Now it's not like during the Cold War, we knew who the enemy was. It was colored pink on the map, and it was the Soviet Union. And so you knew that was the enemy. But now you don't know where the enemy is anymore. And the terrorism seems to generate not just in the Middle East, but bombings in Brussels and in Paris and London and New York. And so this makes us feel very insecure. We like the illusion of knowing where the enemy is, but we don't know. The Buddha pointed out that the samsara, or the conditioned realm, its basic nature is insecure, it's changing. And that's the nature of this realm. It's not, you can't find real security or safety or certitude within it, because it's changing, and it's not always changing the way we want it to change. It changes according to other conditions. And those conditions, some of them are quite obvious, some are, not obvious at all, or subtle, or far away. But what we can, in the present moment, is be aware. And that's the certainty that the Buddha pointed to, is sati, sampajanya, and panya. This is the way out of, this is the door to the deathless, the amatta Dhamma. That's the refuge in wisdom and in understanding, insight. Because the rest is changing to conditions we have no control over. Now, when we actually have insight into this, rather than being more neurotic or more frightened, we relax, because when we think about the future and the problems that lie in the future, national problems, family problems, social problems, international problems, there's endless possibilities, permutations, variations on possible problems that will arise, disasters or failures or wars or strife of some sort, or climate changing where it makes our lives unbearable, or collision with a meteorite, or who knows what's going to happen in the future. The future is the unknown. And so this is like informing oneself with this knowing the unknown, knowing insecurity, knowing doubt, is like this, is the knowing that comes through wisdom. It's Buddha knowing rather than personal, cultural knowing that you know about this and have heard rumors about that, and the authorities, the people in the know have told you this, and the uncertainty of the information, mass media, that we depend upon for information. So these first three fetters, they're the artificial conditions we create out of ignorance, that we don't see the path, knowing the path, having insight into the amatta Dhamma. It's impossible if we're always operating from Sakya Ditti, Silabbata Paramasa, Vicikicca. It's totally impossible to awaken to the path, the amatta Dhamma, the Eightfold Path, or have right understanding, Samaditi, if all we're doing is grasping these first three fetters and operating from them without investigating or understanding what we're doing. So in England, for example, I met people who, there was one man, he was very, very fine kind of retired lawyer, and he'd been practicing Buddhist meditation for 20 years, very strict kind of Burmese type meditation, a very disciplined, very intelligent person. But he told me after 20 years he hadn't gotten anywhere. He hadn't, he'd done all the right things. He had a shrine room in his house. And he dedicated himself to the technique that he was taught and the practice. But he never reflected on things. He just, there's a kind of belief that the technique, some meditation technique will enlighten you, or if you sit for so many hours you're bound to get enlightened, or if you believe in Buddhism you'll become enlightened. There's a lot of just assumptions that we go along with that come from Sakya Ditti, Silabbata Paramasa, Vicikicca. Now in the Buddhist teaching, this is very clearly stated, because the first three fetters are quite obviously human-made. After that, then like the Sakadagami still has sexual desire and aversion, raga and patika, but these are then seen in terms of the reality of them as they arise and cease in the present, rather than seeing them from personal identity, personal judgment, cultural biases, and the thinking process. So that's called a once returner. But it's still, even after seeing the path, there's still these natural forces that are part of human karma that all human beings have. But they're interpreted now in terms of Dhamma rather than in terms of human values, human prejudices, personal attitudes, personal assumptions. So the emphasis on these three fetters is to, you can't, is to investigate them. It's not to get rid of them or try to get rid of self-view, cultural conditioning, and stop thinking, because you can't really do that. It doesn't work, because it's still coming from sakyaditi, from avijja, from ignorance of Dhamma. And so trying to get rid of selfishness or anger or greed or jealousy or fear, just trying to deny them, get rid of them, run away from them, is increasing the problem. Because these are always interpreted in terms of personal values. It's my greed, I'm a greedy person, or I'm an angry person. We strongly identify with sexual tendencies. So we make a self around whether we're homosexual or transgender, or these are the things of the time, the strong identities with sexual inclinations from the Sakyaditi Silabbata Paramasa Vichikicha level. So the opportunity we have to investigate Dhamma, this is to get to the source, get to the root, isn't kind of denying anything or suppressing, but it's understanding what we're doing. And this is within our potential as human beings, as Buddhists. The teachings are available, encouraged. Now there's tremendous interest in bhatipata, in the practice. It's not, a minority thing. I hear in this area, Buddhism is the second, really, after Christianity. So Buddhism, of course, can be just Silabbata Paramasa. If we just cling to it, to its forms, and as a cultural conditioning, religious conditioning. But I think the thing that so many of us awaken to and appreciate within the Thai forest tradition, like teachers like Luang Cha, Ajahn Mahambua, Ajahn Anand, teachers of this quality, because they're teaching the Dhamma teachings. They're not just teaching ceremonies and reinforcing the identity or religious biases that we might have. It's awakening to reality. So the stream and these four stages become attainments in the way we think, from the Sakya Deity level, from the thinking of, attaining stream entry. Who is a stream enterer? Who is an arahant? And we have various views about various teachers, whether they're, arahants or not. This clock has low battery. So, but the thing with these, they're not attainments. You don't attain stream entry. It's not an attainment. It's through letting go of ignorance. It's not that there's something wrong with you. It's just that these fetters, you're clinging to these fetters, and you don't know you're doing it. So it's letting go of these fetters through wisdom. It's not through suppression. It's not Sakya Deity kind of thing. I've got to get rid of the fetters, but it's understanding the fetters, acknowledging them, because it's quite clearly stated what Sakya Deity is. Silabhata Paramasa, Vichikicha. And then you can explore your own sense of self, what you think you are, your identities, and listening to the sense of I am this physical body, I am a man, I am a woman, I am Australian, or I am whatever, is convention. And you're creating that with language. The I and am and this personality is like this is English language. You're not born with speaking English or any language. But you're aware of thinking, you're aware of the identities, and you're aware of it combined with wisdom, panya, in order to discern that it is conditioned phenomena, which is not a judgment or a value system. It's just recognizing that whatever you're thinking or feeling is this way, it's changing. It has no core to it, it has no soul, no heart, no essence. It is like phenomena rolling on, empty phenomena like soap bubbles or foam on the sea, as they say in the scriptures. But this awareness, sati sampajanya and panya, is the door, the gate, the escape hatch from this realm of death that we are strongly identified and deluded by. Because when you're attached to sankharas, you're really attaching to death. That's putting it in rather stark terms. But what is, if all you are is the human body, what's it doing? It's getting old and it'll die. And and of course, this is not being polite or politically correct, because it might upset us to think of we're attached to a realm that is about death, the death realm, the mata, the mara. But out of ignorance, we attach, blindly attach to conditioned phenomena as reality, and then the result is dukkha, the first noble truth. The refuge is about amatta Dhamma, deathless reality, which you can't conceive of. It's not a conception. It's not a perception. But you awaken to it. The third noble truth is about nirodha, or the cessation of a condition. And we don't notice the cessations of conditions. Say the average ignorant human being is when something changes or ceases, we aren't observant of it. We go on to the next thing. We're always seeking rebirth in something else. So, like being inspired, we're inspired with Buddha's teaching, and we become very interested, and then we get bored with it, and then we look for some other religious path, because inspiration, interest is impermanent. In monastic life, for example, you become a bhikkhu, you're inspired, you think it's a wonderful thing, and then you go through periods of great boredom and doubt with it, and the critical mind sets in. You see all kinds of things that you don't really like about it, or things that you think are unnecessary, or it's just boring. I remember my third punts, I was at Tam Sang Pet up in Untitled, north of Ubon. And it was a hot season. And Tam Sang Pet is these hills and caves, and they get the hot sun of Thailand in the hot season. It's like a storage heater. And so you're living in amongst all these hot rocks, and in the hot season, and you just feel incredibly enervated and weak. It's just hard to get up off the floor. And the hot season can be quite, for someone who's not really used to it, can be quite depressing. And I remember this was my third vasa. I think I was there in the hot season, thinking, oh, what am I doing here? It's so hot. And and then I got a letter from somebody in America telling me all the fantastic things they're involved in the Esalen Institute in California, where they're doing all kinds of interesting psychological experiments with mescaline and LSD. And then he talked about all the wonderful, fascinating charismatic gurus in India that he visited, and all kinds. And then he said, Sumedho, you're attached. You're clinging to Ajahn Chah. You should leave there just to prove you're not attached. You're not clinging to a teacher. And so at the time, I was feeling pretty weary of, through the heat, and the kind of honeymoon period of monasticism was over. But the main thing was I began to observe this, the boredom, because boredom or aversion or doubt are conditioned phenomena. There's really this sense of, I'd rather, be doing something fascinating. You get a letter full of kind of this vigor and interest and fascinating things to do, and you can hardly get up off the floor of your kuti. I also had malaria then, so nobody was forcing me to stay. It wasn't, Ajahn Chah never carried a gun. And so I could have left, but something in me trusted, there was enough insight by that time to not be caught up in these kind of fantasies of things would be much better if I returned to the United States. And I kind of developed a stronger sense of the path and development from that, going through this kind of arid, dry, boring period of monastic life. was an important part to strengthen one's determination, wisdom, because being bored is another condition. Being fed up with or just being critical, seeing things you don't like in a monastery, and that you can be, if you're too idealistic, then you're going to be disappointed, because monasteries are the way they are. There's no ideal Buddhist monastery on the planet. They're all, they can't be, because they're conditioned phenomena also. But the teaching of the Buddha isn't about perfecting conditioned phenomena into its best form, but it's about understanding, recognizing that all conditions are impermanent. And so these first three fetters are, to be investigated. What is Sakya Deity? I can tell you my definition and how I approach it, but it's up to you to really think of what is the self, what is the personality, what is the ego? Are you the same person all the time? When you're asleep, do you have a name? Do you dream about being this person? Or the sleep consciousness, there's no sense of self in it. So this awakened knowing is the opportunity to cultivate this. Then there's right understanding, samadhi, that comes through this investigation of the Four Noble Truths. The four stages are not like an arahant is not an attainment. It's an individual who's let go of everything, who's really completely free from ignorance. But it's not an attainment, because it's not personal anymore. It's not about me becoming an arahant or not becoming one, but these are stages, these are conventions to help us to reflect, to point the way. So I don't, they talk about attainments, but that word doesn't really make sense to me, because when you really investigate the fetters, it's about non-attainment, about letting go. You don't get anything from it, you just let go of ignorance and the delusions that you create through ignorance. Just like arahant can be in terms of ignorance of Sakya Deity, it's an attainment. Somebody who's arahant there, that monk there is an arahant, and then what do we think? Like they're Superman, or we think of it in terms of superlatives. But when you read the characteristics of an arahant, it's not Superman. It's not about being special anymore. It's being completely normal. A human individual who's free from ignorance and delusion. You don't attain freedom from it. You do it through letting go of the fetters that bind you, that you create through ignorance of Dhamma. So it's going against the whole worldly flow. Like language, like idealism, is about the best, how things should be. You know, how we have ideals, we have principles, high standards, refinements about conditioned phenomena, taking conditions to the superlative level, the very best. And we can create superlatives with thought. It's about thinking, because the thinking process is about discrimination. So it's about the best and the worst, and better and worse, and good and bad, and things like this. So it's about the qualities of conditioned phenomena. But idealistic people are attaching to high-minded ideals. But ideals are conditioned phenomena. They're sankharas. They're beautiful. Not saying that they're a waste of time, but to know an ideal is a sankhara, is wisdom. To attach to ideals can only lead to suffering, because the realm that we're in is not ideal, it's the way it is. The human body that we have is not ideal. It's not perfect, but it is the way it is. And whatever age it happens to be, whatever gender, is not the issue, but it's not ideal. Even though you know, at one point in your life you might have an ideal form, it's not going to stay that way. and the aging process, you know, is creeping up. It's overwhelming me, and this is just the way things are. When we idolize monasteries or teachers, then we're going to be disappointed, because we can, you know, think, oh, what Bodhiwana is, you know, is perfect, is ideal, and inspiring, and then after a while you hear people complaining, people being disillusioned. Because it doesn't fit their ideal. It's not, doesn't, an ideal binds you to very high standards of perfection, which is not the way things are and can't be. And this is what many of us appreciated with Luang Por Chah. Now he's had an apotheosis. He's up in the stars, you know. He's the great master, the Arahant. But when you were living with him, you know, he was fully human and honestly human. He wasn't trying to be some kind of perfect master, or there was no pretense. There was no affected acts. He was what he was. But there was wisdom there, and that inspired me, because the American system is very idealistic. American society, the United States was set up on ideals of how things should be. So we're brought up to hold to ideals and high standards. Now, high ideals and high standards have their purpose. They're like guiding stars. They give a direction. But they're not where you are. They're high above you. And we need a guiding star, you know, a direction to go toward. But we also need to know where we are at this moment. Because we might be on the edge of a cliff and we're looking up at the guiding star, we'll just fall off the cliff. So just on the practical level, you need direction, but you also need to be aware of the conditions of the present moment as they happen to be, even though they may be anything but perfect or what we want. So this teaching of the Four Noble Truths, and it is like it's a perfect teaching, really. It's practical. There's a way of practice. It's clearly laid out. It's not theoretical. It's not about the future. It's available to us. It's not a secret teaching given only to special initiates. There's nothing that we can't talk about or tell you about. The Four Noble Truths, or then they have the Paticca Samuppada, dependent origination, another form of reflection that is really helpful in understanding ignorance and the result of clinging to perceptions, to conditions. So you have these very excellent tools to use, but it's up to the individual to use them. This is like this weekend retreat is meant to be an encouragement to learn how to use what you have already. The faith, the confidence, the identity with Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Now also is an opportunity to make it work, to put it into practice, rather than just clinging to the external forms of religion. So I offer this for this evening's reflection.